You failed already.
The idea is that do you know what? Do you know what, Duncan? How about you fuck off and listen to this wonderful mechanic that doesn't use dice?
Oh, hi, listener. I didn't see you there. This is the Idiots 3 RPG podcast. My name is Duncan, and tonight we're playing Pitch Slap, the competitive game development show where my two fellow idiots pitch their homemade RPGs, and I arbitrarily tell them which one I thought was better. So, who are the other two idiots? Let's introduce yourselves and give me an interesting fact, please. We'll start with you.
Hello, I am Jack Stone, and I like cocktails to a worrying degree.
Nice. And who else we got?
I am AJ. I am ambivalent about cocktails.
Nice.
It's actually pronounced ambivalent.
That sounds like a painkiller. Ambivalent. Which is what we're going to need at the end of this podcast. So let me tell you how the game works. So God knows we need to know the rules. So what's going to happen is AJ and Jack are going to pitch to me a game that they have devised. We're going to discuss the mechanics for self-centered people like myself. We'll maybe try it on for size, and then I'm going to award points for design, novelty, funness, and tonight's special category, must not use dice. So AJ, Jack, the more unique your mechanic in the way that it does not use dice, the more points that I'm going to give you. So, let's roll for initiative, see which one of you's going first.
Lovely. Jack, you pick first. What have you got there?
I've got a D20, a nice black sparkly one.
I've got a D10 that goes up to 100.
That's a percentile die.
So,
it does the same thing.
I'll still win.
12. So there are only two numbers I can lose with.
50!
50!
Okay, 12 versus 50. That means you win, AJ, so you're going first.
Guys, I'd like to just say that this is rigged from the start. Big Idiots is working to keep your wonderful Jack Stone down here.
Yes, I am a big idiot. And yes, I'm keeping Jack down. So,
as the adjudicator, I allow it. So let's just proceed.
Boo.
Excellent.
I'm drunk with power
that
already.
means AJ's going first. Again.
All right, so when I was presented with this challenge, I thought, what is the opposite of dice? How can I get as far from dice as possible? And the answer is obvious. Playing cards. Opposite of dice.
Is that why
Very
there's
clear.
playing cards at the table? Because I've just
There
hidden
is.
them. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Let me give you those back. I thought they were just on the table for no reason.
Thank you very much. So, in lieu of dice, we have playing cards, and the game is Murder at Fieri Manor.
Oh, this is weird.
How do you murder at what?
Fieri Manor? You're not aware of the global phenomenon of Guy Ramsey Fieri?
Fieri, no.
The chef?
No.
Dungeons and Dragons and dives and diners and all that stuff.
He gets it.
I think you're already going to lose points just because I don't get the reference.
Okay, good thing is, you don't have to. It's a brilliant game regardless. Okay, this is a player-driven RPG take on Cluedo, where the story is told collaboratively, no GM required or involved in any way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's how it works and how the cards come into it. What you do is, at the beginning of the game, everyone gets 6 scraps of paper.
Okay.
And you write down 2 murder weapons. You need murder weapons for a murder.
Of course.
And you write down 4 pieces of evidence, which can be anything you want. They can be a motive you have discovered. They could be something in the scene of the crime.
Mm-hmm.
And then during the game, your goal is to get a murder weapon and 3 pieces of evidence linked to another player or yourself.
Right.
It's all has to be linked to one player, and that's how you win.
So you can do yourself in.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Right. Oh, shit. How awkward would that be?
Yeah.
You're investigating a case. You're like, I find the murder weapon, but all this evidence, it points to me.
That would be a great twist.
Yeah,
would be a great twist.
How does that scenario make sense, though? Here's how it makes sense. You've been invited to the luxurious and over-the-top Fieri Manor for his annual Thanksgiving shitface challenge, and you'll wake up the next morning horribly hungover with zero memory of the previous night. It's a blur of, misadventures and fried food. And you'll make your way to the kitchen and you hear an egg-curdling scream, and it's revealed to you that the maid has found the body of Mr. Guy Ramsey Fieri
Oh, no.
in the garbage at the rear of the
God.
mansion.
Oh, no, he didn't deserve that. I've only just learned of him.
Or
but
maybe
he didn't deserve that.
Maybe he did. We'll find that out through the game.
Well, personally, I'm glad that he's improved upon his shit face challenge. Last year, it was face shit challenge, which is quite a different thing, let me tell you.
So, you have a murder and no recollection of the previous night. The butler and the maid are not going to let you near the body because it needs to be undisturbed while the police arrive from the mainland. In the meantime...
Mainland? Is this on an island somewhere?
Yeah, he owns an island.
What is it? The island called?
I don't know. The New Fieri.
Okay, cool.
Not my best improv. I'll
Cool.
come back to that
right,
one.
okay. Yes, and.
I had
Yes,
to come up with a
and.
plot reason for the police not to just turn up.
Okay, sure.
So, mainland. There you go. There's no cell phone coverage.
Go on then. Go
Usual
on. Go
tropes. So, you'll meet in the aquarium room and you decide to split out and search the house and find clues, and you're going to figure out who did this murder. There's one of you. You're the only people on the island. So that's the game. You have to uncover the mystery of who murdered Guy Fieri.
So the motive is generated by the players.
Yeah, it's just general evidence. There's murder weapons and evidence, and there's more evidence than murder weapons. So you only need to collect one murder weapon, and you need 3 pieces of evidence.
So there are motives, weapons, and
That's it.
Evidence.
more
Evidence.
evidence.
Oh, evidence.
Okay.
I'll put evidence as just a broad category. We might want to refine it down. It's just
Cool.
you'll see
Sure.
through the gameplay I've come up with. It gets tricky if you get too specific.
So
Okay,
how, if I might ask a question, you said earlier that the way to win is to connect a murder weapon with evidence that links to a player or yourself.
Correct.
How doth one link thine murderous weapon and evidith to a player?
Aha! Funny you ask.
Isn't that interesting?
This is where the playing cards come in. So
Okay.
what you do, we have 3 players. You take playing cards from each suit, which go up to double the number of players you have. So I've taken cards from every suit up to the number 6 out. If I'm holding the card, besides a joker, the one card I pulled out, if I pull a 2, whatever evidence I have linked to this playing card, which I'll explain in a minute as well, it links to the player 2 to my left. So Duncan, you're to my left, and then Jack's 2 to my left. So whatever
Okay.
I've got, it links to Jack.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
This is how the playing cards come in and how you assign evidence to different people.
So what... Sorry, Jack, you ask your question.
So people take it in turns to draw a card.
You all draw at once. How about we go over
Yeah, do it, do
how the
it.
game begins?
Do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Walk us through the setup and maybe dish us some things. We'll just like start it, shall we?
It's one of those games that I feel is going to be easier once we start playing.
Yeah, we'll have a little.
Yeah, I
little
think
feel
so.
about it.
Let's do a very mini way of coming out with it. Each of you get a piece of paper, grab something to write with.
Sure.
Write a murder weapon or piece of evidence on it. We're just
Murder
testing it
weapon
out, so it doesn't
or
matter.
piece of evidence.
Whatever you want.
Okay.
If it's a
'Cause
murder weapon,
technically-
you have to put weapon on the top so people know it's a weapon. Cool. So we've all written something down, and how it works is you shuffle up the cards, and you write all your evidence down. So for each person will be 2 murder weapons and then 4 bits of evidence. You shuffle them, and then you lay out your cards on the table up to the number of pieces of evidence, which in our case will be 18, but we don't have that many, so I'm just going to put a random number down.
Sure.
Then you put the evidence on top of the playing cards.
Okay.
Or underneath, it doesn't really matter. So now that evidence is tied to that playing card. You don't move it off the table.
Okay.
Cool, until we pick it. So now we're all in the aquarium room. We're going to split out and go and search for evidence and murder weapons. So pick a card from the table.
Is there a reason that we start in the aquarium of all places?
It seemed like a dramatic place to...
I mean, I like it.
Start?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Oh, do I?
Depending on what's in the aquarium, it could be very dramatic.
Could be like a shark, laser sharks.
Cool.
Frickin' shark with
Do we
frickin' laser
reveal?
beams.
Oh, we do.
Just for this. In the actual game, you don't. Because in Cluedo, you only want you to have the information.
Yes.
You don't want anyone else to have it. You want to solve the murder. Cool.
Sorry, I can't read this handwriting that's on mine.
It says, valuable spatulas discovered in your room.
Valuable spatulas. Spatulas with value.
Yes, Fieri is a chef. I'm sure he has very valuable spatulas.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
There's like
Of all the
signature-
things the
And
chef
your
would have,
card is number 6, so which player is 6 to your left?
Oh, I'm number 6.
So you've discovered some valuable spatulas in your room.
My own room.
Yeah.
Wow, I rummaged through the drawers and I found some spatulas. I'm like, these look valuable.
Yeah, the memories are coming back.
Like,
It's
I
all
remember,
coming back
I
to you.
remember spanking
And Jack, what have
Guy.
you got?
I've got a bigger, blacker dick.
You
which
do
I can-
not.
I can only
Absolutely do
assume.
not.
I can only assume that is a weapon.
Okay, and 1, 2, 3. That ties to you.
Yep.
And I've got 3 as well, so it ties to me too. So that's fun. And mine's a candlestick. Good classic.
You gotta have a
sensible Cluedo
candlestick.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, in the
Joker.
game, there'll still be a whole bunch of cards on the table. And what we do now, there is a vote phase, and we all vote secretly on who we want to reveal their evidence. So we compel someone back in the aquarium to reveal their findings.
Okay.
Cool. So you just write down a piece of paper, you'll reveal it at once. Whoever's got the most votes, they have to reveal it. Yep, so you keep them secret. Let's say we vote, and you and Jack both vote for me.
Sure.
I can vote for myself as well. There could be a reason for that. And I have to turn it over and explain, I found this candlestick in my own room, which I know sounds suspicious, but here is the reason I found the candlestick in my room. I invited
So you're not dictating...
Mr. Fieri to my room for some fun and games, and he brought the candlestick along as a aid in those fun and
Marital aid.
games.
Yes.
I don't know exactly what he was planning, but I declined, and we went our separate ways. So I think you'll find this suspiciously bloodstained candlestick has nothing to do with me.
Right.
See?
Right.
So if it links to yourself, you have to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
And you explain what you found, and then you have to give an explanation for it. So let's say it's tied to a different person, redrawing. So I get a 1, candlestick's tied to you.
It is.
Cool?
It's my candlestick. I brought
So
it
then I
from
say,
home.
I found this bloodied candlestick with a clear notch in the base from where it has struck something in your bedchambers, Duncan, or your Cluedo name, Professor Plumpy.
I can explain.
Explain yourself, Professor Plumpy.
Let me explain why there's a bloodied candlestick with a notch in it. First off, I brought it from home. It's my own candlestick. So actually the notch isn't even from the party last night. You know, I don't remember the party last night, but I remember the notch. Funny story. There was an earthquake and it actually dropped on my dog. And then my dog got angry at it and picked it up and ran through the house, you know, I guess in sort of revenge, and it bumped against a bunch of walls, and so it looks like it struck somebody. The blood is new, but it's probably to do with the fact that it's a bit hazy. But
I'm not sure I believe him.
there's a few people in my room last
Me
night.
neither, mon ami.
There's some definite. There
This
was
is
some
highly suspect.
cutting going on.
Cool. So you've defended why I'm linking this to you.
Oh, yeah.
Now I turn it back over.
The
So
dog
It's
ate
now my
it.
secret again, and you'd have to note down what it is and who it's linked to, and then you finish your explanation with "and furthermore," and you show me your card and piece of evidence,
Okay, and furthermore,
and you slip it to me secretly because I'm accusing you. You're just trying to convince me. Does that make sense?
no.
So this one gets revealed to everyone because
Yeah.
I'm accusing you. That one gets just revealed to me. So now I've got some information.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Because
Because in a story way, you're trying to convince me that it wasn't you.
from a
Although
plot,
it doesn't make sense because yours is actually...
from a plot perspective,
you.
what benefit
Can he
is it for
choose?
me?
Can he choose which one he gives you? Because I assume you collect a few of these. Over
Oh,
the
yeah,
course
yeah.
of a
You can
game.
choose whichever one you want, but you've only got one at this point.
Yes. So for baby's first game, it's a bit more complicated than it should have been.
So if someone needs to get 3 of these cards,
4 in total.
4 of these cards, and everyone draws 1 at each round, doesn't everyone just win at the same time if they just need 4
No,
of them?
because you don't know what everyone has. Because everyone's seen mine, I've seen Duncan's. You don't know what Duncan's is, and I don't know what yours is. So we've all got different information.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, because we don't reveal everything at once. Okay?
So end game. I've got a few more questions, but let's talk about end game
And
first.
you're not just using your own cards. You're playing with everyone's cards on the table.
Right.
So let's say I want to end the game and win.
Yep.
What do I do?
In that phase where you vote to reveal someone's card, you instead say you have a thrilling revelation.
Okay.
And then you explain the story, starting with your own cards.
Yeah.
So I start with, my first clue was finding the candlestick in the room of Professor Plumpy. And then I go on to talk about it. And if I'm using other players' cards, I point at those players and cite the evidence as I go. Cool.
Right.
And all that evidence has to be linked to the same person. Sweet.
So
It's like Cluedo, but more complicated.
right. So you're not just so you can reveal cards of your own, cards that you've got, cards that Jack's got. Well, in this final round, but they should all. If I was accusing, do I assume that you were the killer and I'm trying to point the evidence towards you?
Well, ideally, you know what some of the other cards are,
Yes.
and you think there are enough cards linked to that person that everyone's holding, and you cite the evidence, and then after you're told your version of the story, everyone turns over their playing card and you see if you've done it correctly. If you've done it incorrectly, you have fucked up, you haven't solved the mystery, and play just continues. So that's how you win.
Is there a consequence for fucking up?
You lose your next... No, I haven't figured it out yet.
Okay.
There should be
Well,
one.
maybe we'll come back to that.
So there's a voting system in that every player has to say, I think it's this person, and the person who is...
Not every person. Are you meaning the vote phase?
Yes.
The vote phase is just who you want to reveal evidence. Like, it's, okay, what have you found? I want to know what this person has found out.
Right. And then that... And
then there's an accusation phase, which is when the person who gets the most votes turns their card over, and they accuse whoever their card is linked to.
Okay, so the voting phase, whomever is voted in, they have to turn all of their cards
just
over.
their most recent one.
Just the most recent card over. And then that's the end of that particular phase.
Yes, so they turn it over.
And everyone sees it.
Yep, and they accuse whoever it is. Then the person who's accused has to explain away the evidence and then show their card to the person who just had to reveal their one.
Okay.
Okay.
Additional question. A nitpick question. Because these are my favorite of questions. Is the
I
ones
hate nits. Please pick my nits.
Yes, I'll pick them right off your skin.
These nits.
So, in terms of gameplay, is the story that you weave not totally superfluous to the game? Because it has no bearing on how you win or any bearing on who is involved or who you suspect, because that's all done mechanically. Is the story then not just superfluous?
Somewhat, but it makes it more fun.
Yeah, ultimately, all stories are superfluous to a certain degree.
You could just roll dice, and whoever rolls the highest dice wins. But the story is what makes RPGs exciting.
Like,
so
you're describing like if Skyrim didn't have any graphics and was just an ASCII game, and you just rolled dice.
I must disagree. Because if you compare, so if you look at a typical RPG, which is obviously usually driven by story. The story is what puts you in a situation, and you use the story to get back at it. The mechanics are there to make the story unpredictable. Whereas this game, it sounds like the story isn't affecting the game because the story doesn't change the game at all. The story is just sort of an extra piece of icing.
Is that necessarily a bad thing?
I'm not necessarily saying that it is. I just want to make sure I understand. So the story at this point is just sort of weaving cards together.
Yeah, the mechanics are basically a vehicle to have the story happen.
Right.
Which I think is the correct use of mechanics.
It's sort of like, The Hangover or something like that. A bunch of friends wake up and they have to weave together the past few hours. And I wanted to do a story like that was told entirely in flashbacks or about finding things out in some kind of murder mystery way.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question. I'm still pondering, so I have no follow-up at this point.
Fair enough.
I think that if you had a story that somehow affected the mechanics in a significant way, then you're going to end up creating a game where the story is truly superfluous. If you understand my meaning, where people will choose specific results story-wise in order to get the best mechanical outcome. Whereas if you do make the story... Basically, if you make the story affect the mechanics and you encourage players to fuck with the story and not actually use it creatively...
But if you go back to what you might call your, again, air quotes, invisible air quotes, typical RPG, the story is what everyone is telling together, and the mechanics are there to further the plot or make it unpredictable. Whereas what you're saying is you don't gear the story for your mechanics. You use the mechanics to tell the story.
Yeah, what this more is, it's kind of more of a board or card game with that RPG storytelling part put over the top of it. So you could just play this with cards and not have the explanations or accusations or things like that.
But it'd be boring.
It wouldn't be boring. It just wouldn't be.
I think it'd be boring.
It wouldn't be an Fair enough. It wouldn't be an RPG.
Yeah.
So telling the story in flashbacks, the characters and the players are creating the story as they go, because you're going to build up more and more evidence and get these weird sets of scenarios about Mr. Fieri was catfishing your sister, and so you took the candlestick to his room, and I discovered these chalk footprints, blah 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 blah. Or preferably make it more ridiculous than that. But you're telling the story basically in hindsight, and that's how it gets created.
Right. So the idea is that every player tries to build on the stories that's been previously told, rather than because
Pretty much, or they're writing their own story because they want to figure out who did it from their perspective and what cards they know different people have. Yeah, one thing I did find tricky when I was first designing this was player control, because you don't have a lot of control over like where the cards are, and if you just don't have them line up with the right person for the cards you're seeing, you don't have control over winning the game. It's kind of just randomly whoever gets which cards the point to which person. So I had a mechanic to solve that, but it doesn't make sense from a story point of view.
Okay,
I'm going to bring it in anyway.
Let's bring it in, and we can always figure it out after.
The cards we've got are assigned to a person relative to where we're sitting, right? What you get at the beginning, you get 3 permanent swap tokens, and you can use that token at any point between any of the phases to swap any 2 playing cards.
Right. So
not the evidence. The evidence stays where it is, but I could swap my card with yours, or you could swap yours with Jack's or whatever. Does that make sense? So if I use my token and we swap playing cards, our evidence is now linked to different people.
Right.
So now your evidence is linked to Jack's. Does that make sense? Because yours was a weapon, right?
Yes, it was.
So if I'm missing a weapon for Jack, but I've got all my other evidence,
no,
I can swap it.
It wasn't. I've got valuable spatulas.
Fair enough.
Sorry.
Let's say I'm missing a piece of evidence to link to Jack. I can swap 2 of the cards, make it happen, then make my revelation in the accusation phase.
Right.
See how it changes? Because then you've got control over where the cards are. It also makes it more complicated because you have to keep really good track of where the cards have changed to in your Cluedo notes.
How long do you see this particular game going on for?
Well, I have playtested it. It takes about 30 minutes per game for 4 people. So I think with 3, it would take about the same, maybe a little bit less.
Right.
It's not bad.
Yeah, it's very one shot, and when I played it was still work out the kinks, and we played I think 3 games. It took us just under 2 hours. So it's quite fast play, but you get, it's all got that Cards Against Humanity kind of feel, where you're just revealing ridiculous things as you go, and then people laugh at them. It's got that same sort of mechanic, which is, proven. Everyone loves Cards Against Humanity, so it's got that same weird shit being revealed on cards mechanic.
One thing about Cards Against Humanity, though, is that it is ultimately an extremely simple game. With this one, I see it being somewhat complicated.
Yeah,
especially when you're having to establish the rules. When the game only takes 30 minutes, you'll be explaining the rules for about 30 minutes as well. I feel like it's extremely complex, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
It's not. It's actually very easy to play. It's tricky to win when there's a lot of swaps and things happening.
Right.
The actual playing of it goes pretty simply because you just lay out the cards and then you pick up 1 card per turn, and then the vote, and you just do what the vote says happens. It's not complex to play, but the way the cards move around make it very tricky to link the evidence with people, and you need that kind of challenge. But you can also make it easier. So instead of 1 weapon and 3 pieces of evidence, you can go 2 pieces of evidence, and then that very quickly means it links to 1 person. So you can have difficulty levels built in depending on how much evidence you have to collect.
And in order to win, somebody has to create this link between the various people. It seems like it requires quite a lot of note taking.
Yes.
That might be off-putting for some people. Is there a way that we could deal with that? Or maybe
you could take away the swaps because then they don't move. But again, that takes away the player control.
Yeah, there's less strategy involved.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Do the rounds get repetitive? If it's because it's the same format every round, is that correct?
Yes, but you're having new evidence revealed every round. So it's some other part of your flashback, some other part of last night is being revealed. So instead of sort of in a usual RPG like D&D, you're creating the story as you go. In this one, the story's already happened, and you're trying to write it. You're trying to figure out what happened last night. So it's sort of, instead of moving forwards in time, it's moving backwards in time. So it's not your standard one. But I assure you, this is hilarious and fun.
It's not like your other RPGs.
Nope.
Well, that's the thing. It seems very much on the edge of the word RPG in that you're not so much playing a role as you are collectively telling a story.
You tell a role because we had roles just then. Professor Plumpy and.
But what bearing did Professor Plumpy have on my part of the game.
None whatsoever, in much the same way as the story has no real bearing on the
because
game.
you don't have player stats in this.
Mm.
It's
Yes.
just all about revealing the story. Like each player doesn't have any particular skills. Although I guess you could start with different tokens that give you different abilities to do things.
That would potentially
Sneak a look at
create
somebody's card kind of thing.
that would potentially create even more complexity. I know you say it's simple to play.
I'm aiming to. I wanted it to be complex. I want something like Cluedo, but I think Cluedo is boring.
Oh, okay.
And doesn't have any strategy or skill to it. You just roll, go to different rooms. There's nothing to it.
I think
This is, you've got control over it. It's more complex. This isn't your grandma's Cluedo. It's not your little brother's Cluedo. It's
this is
big dick energy Cluedo.
I think, Jack, you're onto something with different characters having like a unique something about them. Like if one character had the ability to view someone's card like independently of everything else, or one character had like an extra swap, or these types of, it might add
I did
more.
have something where an extra swap is built in.
Sure.
So in that phase where there's the accusation, I have to reveal my card to everyone. And the person I accuse, they have to show me their one. The person had to reveal all of their ones. They get a look token. So you can use it at any time before the next round to look at any other card in the game.
Okay.
Because you just revealed your card to everyone, you need an advantage. And then the person who got accused, they get a temporary swap token. So this look token and the temporary swap token, they disappear by the time you get to the next round. So you need to use them by then.
Right.
So every round they get moved to a different player. I did have something like that, but that wasn't linked to particular players' stats or abilities or things. Which if you had particular abilities for players, you'd sort of need to do it in a board game sort of way, where you've got cards which give you a character and give you abilities.
Unless you
And
just
it
had
wouldn't
a list.
it wouldn't be created by the player.
Well, unless you just had a list of abilities and you chose whichever one you wanted to use.
Oh, like a pool, and then you can pull them out at the beginning.
Yeah, that would be. You'd have to be very careful with balance.
You would.
With that though, and any time that you start introducing character abilities and things like that,
it gets unbalanced.
you do have to start working on balance, which is a pain in the arse for the designer, but it can create.
A lot of...
I know you were trying to do this with the tokens, where you're creating player agency rather than basically relying on randomness to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But with player abilities, you could actually replace the tokens with player abilities, and then everyone kind of knows where they stand.
Yeah. What other abilities could we have? Like swapping cards. I find swapping cards probably the most powerful, because then you can change what evidence is linked to.
Evidence destruction.
Peak.
Oh,
They just remove a piece of evidence.
Yeah, I think you need a peak as well, or perhaps a change, like maybe one ability is that you can choose who it's linked to. So it's not just swap a card, it's like this one is now linked to you kind of deal.
That's quite a powerful one.
It would be quite powerful, yeah. And that's what Jack's talking about with
It's
balance.
the balance.
Maybe that could be if you get voted for a certain number of times, because then you've had to reveal your cards to everyone a certain number, so you get an even bigger buff.
Yeah, like the ability called "Why It Always Got to Be Me," and if you get accused a bunch of times, you could keep your abilities secret as well.
Yeah.
And then when you use them, everyone now knows that you've got that ability, so they're a little bit more careful.
Yeah.
Especially if
Do you think should the abilities be one-time use or just ongoing?
Depends how powerful they are.
It really does depend. You say it only takes 30 minutes.
So
I think in a
This is
30-minute...
the most basic version I've already come up with. As soon as we add this stuff, I don't know what could happen.
Yeah, I think that's something that we should.
I think it'd probably get faster
test.
if there was more human agency, where you can use strategy to change who is linked to what. The game would theoretically get faster. Well, I suppose you could argue it would get slower if everyone's changing about, but it doesn't sound like it would change that much. So theoretically, if you had a solid strategy from the start, you could speed the game up in your favor each round by picking the right people to vote for.
Yeah, true.
So you could add an extra phase. So you have the voting phase, the accusation phase, and there could be like something like the action phase, where everyone gets an opportunity to use their abilities to change the outcomes of certain things, or preemptively change the next round, or something like that.
That's a good idea.
You also have the option of having reactions instead of actions, so everybody's ability can only be activated if it's in response to some other
Yes,
type
that's
of
good.
thing.
If someone takes your card or tries to destroy your card.
Yes, you could have I object, and if you just yell that
objection.
If you just yell that
up.
at the right moment, you can do whatever it is, deny like change somebody's plot.
The Judge Gerald character gets that
I was thinking
one.
the Phoenix Wright character actually.
That's a trademark term that we cannot use on this podcast.
It's Phoenix Wright spelled without a W.
I see. Okay, it's audio, so we don't know.
if I might ask, could we spend maybe the next 10 minutes playing the game?
Yep.
Just going through more than one round, because there's a lot of mechanics floating around. This player abilities thing is taken right up into the stratosphere.
Let's play the simple version, and we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Previously on Murder at Fieri Manor.
Jack, what have you found, mon ami?
Why, well, it's real curious what I found. What I found was a second dead body other than Guy Fieri's, located in his room. This filth has not only killed Fieri, but he's done in another whoopee whoopee.
Ah, what you found? Had you examined closer, you would have found the body. Looked exactly like my own. Who you found was my clone, who tried to infiltrate the party late last night. I had to do away with him like I did with the other clone. I mean, like I've never done before. He's my clone, he's trying to take over my life. I had to take measures into my own hands. I assure you, he's a clone with no human rights. I did not kill Mr. Fieri, this is a separate personal matter. Sir, I compel you. What have you found?
Right, it's your old mate Dezza. Your old mate Dezza's got a thrilling revelation.
Oh, mon ami.
On I who killed Guy Fieri. And now, the conclusion of Murder at Fieri Manor. It was this cunt.
Moi?
First, I was suspicious when we discovered there was a second body in your bedroom. As me old mate Jack was saying, it does show a sort of a predisposition towards killing people. Second, I know the motive for you killing Guy Fieri. You remember how he served an interesting little succulent meat? Well, I can tell you that was a dog. That dog was your dog, and he fried it up, Guy Fieri style, deep fried it. I'll tell you what, I've got more evidence. The second piece of evidence, the bloody sock that we found. Tell me, where'd the bloody sock come from? You don't need to speak, because I already know you're guilty. You stepped in Guy Fieri's poor body when you killed him. And I'll tell you what you killed him with. You killed him with a bloody rapier, didn't you? My rapier that we thought was mine. Turns out you've got a rapier as well. And so that's 3 pieces of evidence and 1 weapon, mate. You fucked it.
I have only one thing to say, mon ami. It's a fair cop. I'm not French at all. Furthermore, I killed his dead parrot just for the hex. I'm a sick and demented man. You got me.
Right, well, there's no law enforcement here, so you might as well walk away, because there's nothing we can do about it.
Very good, and
Claps all right.
And
Applause.
scene.
I tell you what,
good.
I wasn't sure at first, but I did thoroughly enjoy that.
Yeah, that was good. I like that.
But it does seem to me to be a game that's going to really, really need the right people to play it. It's not, you can't just pop this out at a party, because if the people aren't getting into it, the accents added so much humor, you know?
Yeah.
That really did help.
It is like a quick play party game, maybe a warm up to a bigger D&D.
Yes.
You're gonna do it, or maybe you're waiting
yeah.
for some people who are late. Nice little quick play icebreaker.
We hope that the accents added humor. You, our audience, will decide that.
Yes.
They could have just added, xeno and racial insensitivity.
Yeah.
Very good. And that's my case.
Well, thank you for presenting your game and for letting us play it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and we'll give you some marks now, actually, so I don't forget, and then I'm going to cover it up so you can't see it on my piece of paper.
Very good.
You're not going to announce it now.
I shan't announce it. I shan't announce.
Instead, we will have Jack's case next after a message from these sponsors.
I'm Sarah Beck for the U.S. Department of Agriculture with the question, just how good is good? Good, the USDA's third quality grade for meat, is not as juicy and flavorful as the higher grades, prime and choice. But good is somewhat more lean, acceptably tender, and it's usually less expensive. You should cook most good grade meat with moist heat. For more information, write How to Buy Meat, Agriculture Radio, Washington, D.C. 20250.
Ha ha ha! What a great commercial! I'd buy that for $1.
I'd buy it for $2.
3.
Well, you guys are being ripped off, because I got it for $1. So, speaking of being ripped off, let's hear Jack's game.
I resent that. Okay, so this is less of a game and more of a general mechanic. So
Well, you failed already.
The idea is that do you know what? Do you know what, Duncan? How about you fuck off and listen to this wonderful mechanic that doesn't use dice, as was the requirement. So, this particular mechanic, much like AJ's, it seems like we're on the same wavelength. And this is why I'm convinced that he should have married me instead. It also uses cards. It doesn't use playing cards. It uses user-created cards. So, in a game that requires actions to be taken, dice are used to determine success. Right?
Correct.
That's the general idea. So drawing on that, I thought, what is a nice way of giving the people at the table a little bit more control over the outcome rather than the single player necessarily. Maybe they've got character skills, so they add like a 5 to their dice roll. Maybe they've got a bit of agency over there, but I want to give everyone at the table the ability to influence the success or failure of this particular game. So the mechanic involves 4 different kinds of cards.
Okay.
Success, failure, boon, and bane. Boon! That's my Bane impression.
That was so bad.
I know. Anyway, so the way that it works is that each of those 4 things are combined. So you can have a success with a boon, a success with a bane, a failure with a boon, or a failure with a bane. So what that translates into real person speak is you succeed with a boon means you succeed and something good happens. You succeed with a bane, it means that you succeed at the action but something bad happens.
I can't now split Bane the villain from
Yeah.
Bane the card. We may need to change the name
No,
of the card.
no. Boons and banes. Boons and banes.
Boons and Banes.
And the way
So this is sort of like it's mixed success or success
Yes,
rolls.
yes,
Got it.
exactly like that. So a success with a boon might be I try to kick in the door. You kick in the door, but you take a point of damage. That's a success with a bane. Or rather, a failure with a boon mean you fail to kick in the door, but you kicking a specific part of the wall accidentally opened a secret compartment that you didn't notice before. So you don't succeed at what you were intending, but something else good happens. It's almost like no but in improv, and the yes and. So the way that this works in my head is that each person at the table is able to vote on the success, failure, boon, or bane of a particular action in a game. So let's say I try and kick in the door. I then step back from the action, and the GM, or maybe no GM, the other players, simply say, okay, what do you guys want to happen? AJ can then vote with I want it to be a success with a boon.
Are we a team in this scenario?
That's the thing. It's both it can be both competitive or collaborative depending on the game style that you're wanting to work with. This is a mechanic that fits into a game rather than a game itself. I do have an example of a game that it can work with.
Awesome.
After I've explained the mechanic, I will go into
So
that.
what you're bringing to the table is the type of... It's sort of like Savage World. It's like this mechanic you should... build on top of your story comes on top of it.
It's intended to be that you can fit it into any environment that you want. It's not setting specific.
So it's the ultimate RPG. There's not even it's so unrestricted. It's not even a fantasy. It's not even a sci-fi. I'm
a big fan of Savage Worlds because of its flexibility,
right?
And its ability to be applied to any setting, no matter what, to a certain extent.
Cool.
And that's where this was drawn from. So. For example, the example game that I've got this is why I laughed when AJ introduced his Cluedo game, it could be a game of whodunnit.
Okay.
Right? Or really any game that both requires collaboration and cooperation to a certain degree. So, here's the setting of a game. You are in a mansion, the Cluedo mansion, for example.
The mansion of... Playboy millionaire Guy Fieri.
Yes, exactly. You are
where are we? What mansion? You set the scene.
We are in.
Pick a different chef.
Pick a different chef. We're in Gordon Ramsay's nightmare kitchen mansion.
Oh,
I like it.
Yes,
nice, like a haunted house full of kitchens.
And he has been found eviscerated, but he's been killed, and you need to find evidence, or you need to explore the mansion to find out what's been happening.
Sure.
So each person at the table has a particular secret. That's what I called them, is a big capital S secret, which refers to a relationship that they have with other players. Now, this isn't an integral part of the mechanic, but this is one way that I can see it working. So, for example, AJ's character could have the secret that he loves Duncan's character. And in order for AJ's character to succeed, he has to see Duncan's character get a certain number of successes, banes, boons, or failures.
So there's the main goal, and then we each have our own separate
Yes, there's
goal.
a community goal.
Yes, I like that.
It's basically the prisoner's dilemma, but a little bit more of a game. So there's a community goal where if you manage to find out Guy Fieri's murderer, however, I haven't gone that far into it, but however that mechanic works, if you manage to survive a certain number of rounds or find a certain amount of evidence or something along those lines, everybody at the table wins. That's a long-term goal. However, if somebody at the table manages to succeed in their secret, they are able to win immediately. So it's a far smaller but more short-term
So the game
goal.
would end.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's both collaborative and cooperative. So
So there's an end goal for everyone, but you can just fuck
you can
everyone
fuck
over
everyone
and
else
win?
over.
Okay.
So let's say AJ's character loves Duncan's character, and Duncan's character hates my character. In order for Duncan's character to win, he has to vote and influence other people to vote in a certain way. He needs to influence people to vote that I get, say, 3 failures. Not failures with Banes, but 3
Straight up failures.
Just failures with Boons or failures with Banes.
Sure.
As soon as that happens, he wins.
How is the relationships chosen? Do you have a set pool? Or
So
do you
I'm
just make them
thinking,
up?
I'm thinking it's random. So there's love, hate, envy.
But
like,
there are set
something.
cards.
Yes, there are
Yeah.
set cards, and the thing is that this is a relatively customizable game. If you suddenly think that there's like an emotional relationship there that you isn't represented, let's say you want to say fuck buddies is a relationship, then you can set that up. So long as it has as a setting, it has a certain number of Banes, Boons, successes, or failures, or combinations thereof.
Yeah, because if it's as simple as you need to get them to fail this many times, and like if everyone is trying to fail everyone else, they wouldn't get very far.
Yeah.
But if you need a certain number of each, that could be really interesting.
Yeah. So AJ's character, who loves Duncan's character, while Duncan's trying to get me, or rather, let's say AJ's character loves my character. So Duncan hates me. AJ loves me. Each of you are trying in competition to get different results from the people at the table. Mm-hmm. So you might want, as a love person, you might want me to get 3 successes. Duncan's character is trying to influence everyone to give me 3 failures. So you guys are in direct competition in order to get
I feel like that would be
results at the
tricky
table.
with 3 people. I think you need a bigger group, like 5.
Yes, this is a game that is one of the weaknesses I identified, is that this is a game that is intended to be relatively simple, so you can explain it to people quite quickly. You say, okay, cool, you guys get these four cards. You can vote with these, and then you can talk to each other between rounds. And basically, the story is superfluous. Like that's just how you're telling the story.
That's how you
how
get
the
through the different
successes and
rounds. Yeah, sure.
failures, how that works.
Well, the story is not so much superfluous, it's the objective and the way to continue this story. It's a bit like your game. The story is trying to be collectively told in a way, and these cards help this. The only way for the story to proceed is these cards. These voting rounds.
Yes, so it's voting rounds.
Okay.
It does get relatively simplistic.
What you could do, because I was thinking about, especially if you've only got 3 people, but I think this would work for any number, because say we're opposed to, if we vote differently, how do you fix that? Like if I go success, he goes failure, or Bane and Boon, or I don't know, whatever, how do you resolve that if there's a tie between just 2 people? What I was thinking is maybe you could just have, the universe sitting as one of the players, and it's just a random vote for any of them.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. I hadn't considered that. I was thinking that
'Cause that'd be good as a
potentially there would be
tiebreaker.
GM, but that requires someone to be the GM, and this is a casual game.
Yeah, I think it's good to have like a tiebreaker if there's a tie, but also just, having randomness in the game. We're trying to avoid dies, but having some kind of randomness in the game, can make things interesting. Because I think that's what's good about RPGs and dice rolls. Like
It's
you can be as good as you want at archery, but sometimes you roll a 1.
Sometimes
and
you get that
you
crit
somehow
fail,
shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where...
It's the unpredictability of the game, the unpredictability of life. I think you need that universe stepping in and fucking your shit up.
Unfortunately, the universe mechanic does fall into the category of... It's basically dice. It's basically dice. If you're drawing randomly,
Yes, it's basically
you might
dice,
as
and he
well
should be
use a
marked
dice.
down. I agree.
Hey, fuck you. For the benefit of the audience, I just hit AJ.
So no, I don't necessarily agree with that. Just because something's random doesn't necessarily mean it's a replacement of dice, which is supposed to be like you're supposed to have a range of random, whereas the universe only has 4 potential options, and it's not like you're rolling a 20 and getting a super success. It's like it's just a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
So long as it's used as just a tiebreaker.
Just a tiebreaker. Yeah, that was my concern with that, is that you might as well just roll a d4 and just say one means you success with Bane, 2 means you success with Boon. And that you're just replacing the thing with another thing. The big thing about this particular mechanic is that it's designed to encourage people to both work together and work competitively, because the way that I imagined it was that whatever game that you use this in, and there's a wide range of different ways that you could use this. You could even use this in D&D to a certain extent, where you get the 4 cards, but you can only use them each one once. Is that maybe at the moment you want this other person to fail, so you use all your failure cards at the moment, but then later on there's a larger something at stake, and now you've used all your failure cards, all your Bane cards.
Yeah, or it can be like I was saying with the universe one. You got 4, they diminish. You can have that for the players as well.
Yes.
You got a set number, they diminish, and then your game is set into blocks where you run out of your options.
Yes.
Something like that. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. And
You know what this would work quite well in?
Yeah.
The Bachelor Fettes.
the Bachelor
Yeah,
Effect.
It'd be
callback.
quite good, because we're talking in that one, that'd be difficult, and this is what I thought when I was judging it, it'd be difficult to balance the, what each individual player wants versus the big goal at the end. This solves it really well. I think it would tie really well into that one.
Jack,
Yeah.
what's the name of this game, by the way? This mechanic.
I haven't really thought of a name. I was just simply
sucking
thinking.
in through my teeth.
I was literally just thinking the Bane and Boon mechanic.
Right.
Ramsey's Kitchen Fight Mares.
Banes and Boons.
That's a way better name.
Banes and Boons.
Yeah, Banes and Boons. It's
Banes
the
and
mechanic.
Boons.
It's the
Banes
mechanic
and
name.
Boons.
Yeah, it's catchy. That's a good name.
Yeah.
When you vote, does it show that the vote is tied to you, or is it just shuffled in the
No,
middle?
yeah, I should have
Yeah, that makes
mentioned
sense.
that
Yeah.
that it's collected by other players, and this is where it's really important to actually have preset cards, not handwritten ones, because you'll be able to tell who does who by your handwriting.
Yep.
Is that the one person collects them? It's randomized, it's shuffled. You can't tell who's choosing what. This mechanic was somewhat inspired by like the idea of relationships in particular. As a way of applying was using it in Big Gay Orcs.
I was going to say there's a distinct
Yeah.
Big Gay Orcs tone to
Yeah,
this idea.
exactly. And that's what I thought of when I was thinking that. I was thinking, well, in order to succeed in that game, you have to, at the end of the game, successfully done one of your, fulfilled one of your desires or furthered your relationship in this particular
Big
way.
Gay Orc sex.
Have Big Gay Orc sex.
If that's what you want. By the sounds of the mechanic, the not single player goal, the community goal there is none. It's a plot that goes until it stops. Oh no, you said earlier there was actually an overarching.
There is an overarching goal.
It sounds like the game would be simpler without the addition of other rules if it was just the plot continues until somebody wins.
It could, yeah.
Because
You
then-
could make it into some wacky story that just keeps on going and gets weirder until someone wins the goal. I
If
don't
there's
know.
is there a GM or is there no GM?
Ideally, there would be no GM,
No
because
GM.
it's intended to be a casual game.
Sure. So theoretically, everyone's contributing to the plot. So you could just make it go forever. Like now it's your turn to continue the story. Now it's your turn to continue the story. But then how do you choose who's up for?
Yeah, because let's say you try and kick down the door, we vote, you succeed, and you break a toe, so you lose a hit point. Then who's in control of what's behind the door?
That's a good point. I'm thinking that
I think you need a GM. I don't think there's anything wrong with needing a GM for this one.
I think
it
so.
could be
too.
I think
Magnet
that-
Hand style GM where it's
Yeah.
actually quite low.
Low key GM.
The thing I don't like, about GMs, which is why my Cluedo one was all the players have the same experience. If you have a GM, someone's like distant from the other players.
Indeed.
I
AJ
like it if everyone gets the same experience out of the game, but if the game needs it and it makes the game better, I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
I think I agree with you. It sounds like this game requires a GM, unless there's some kind of like deck of cards that has more plot points and like now player 2's up or something like that. Something that tells the players who the net, because really any player can further the story so long as it's fair people's like actions. So you want an even spread of people having to be voted on. A simplified version of the mechanic, as is discussed, seems like it could work as like a little mini game in a wider RPG, but then it becomes a mini game rather than an actual game, and it loses a lot of the interesting substance you were talking about earlier, which is the competitive aspect.
Yes.
Which I think is actually where the fun is of this game. is trying to skew votes to, further your own means, regardless of plot. I think that's an interesting way to make a game fun, is make it slightly competitive, especially if the mechanic is of a simpler nature.
Yeah, this will probably only work as a one-shot sort of thing, wouldn't it?
Definitely, yes, because there's no experience or leveling up or anything like that.
No, it's not long-term.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is fine. One-shots are great.
Yep.
I mean, ultimately, I do want to make it clear, the relationships thing isn't necessarily an integral part of the mechanic. The mechanic ultimately boils down to, you get 4 cards, every character at the table gets 4 cards, and when a decision needs to be made as to whether it succeeds or fails, everyone gets to vote on it, rather than it simply being a case of the character and the character's skills, plus some randomness with the die. That's what determines it. Everyone at the table gets an opportunity to say whether it succeeds or fails and how it succeeds and fails.
The competition element of the relationship, I think, is really key to making this a game, not just a mechanic. Because obviously we're here to make games that people can use. And I think the competitive relationship side makes this stand on its own as opposed to need to fit into something else. Because if it was just vote on whether it happened, I mean, you could call that complete, because then it is just everyone tells a story together and the voting says whether it works or not. But it's not so much a game as it is just like an interactive novel. Whereas the competitive side means you've got to be strategic, and as soon as you have to be strategic, it's a game.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And I think I know when you first said relationships, I thought, yes, that's great. Because that means that I, as a player, have a different objective to both of you as players, which means I need to be strategic if I see that. And I can also guess other relationships. Like, if it seems like someone is succeeding a lot, I can maybe try and guess that it's AJ that's doing it. It's almost like Mafia styles. You're trying to guess who's the mafioso. You know?
That's how Mafia works.
Yeah, you're trying to guess who is who and who's got what, and the plot will start to reveal elements of that as well, theoretically.
It could be a case of at the end of the story, each person, so the relationships apply to other players, but maybe they could also apply to environments as well. So maybe they have an ultimate goal of it, like you need to impress the mafia boss so that they let you join as a level 10 hitman or something like that. And at the end of the game, your choices influence how that happens. Someone might have an opposing goal where you need to eliminate the mafia boss.
That's getting very sort of paranoia then in its use of secret objectives.
I mean, that's the intent.
And that works really well with paranoia.
That's the intent, is to ensure that your secrets, they're called secrets for a reason, remain the same. And you could even have a certain goal that ensures that your aim is to make sure somebody else fails. So your whole goal might be make sure that AJ's character never gets to impress the mafia boss.
So here's an alternative that might spark some ideas. What if instead of everyone getting a relationship with the other person, and that's what you're trying to manipulate, what if you've got a GM and all your players, the GM's the one telling the story, all your players are voting. What if your secret objective was for the plot and everyone else had a secret objective for the plot? And so you were voting to try and steer the story in that direction. And then someone else might be trying to steer to their direction, and it's getting all off kilter and things are going wrong and things are going right. And at the end of the game, whatever the story ends up with is whoever wins, because they've succeeded in manipulating the
So
plot.
as in, you need a particular number of overall success or failures, or something like there's a choice between the door or sneaking in through the sewers, and your goal is to go down the sewer route?
I don't think anything
Was that too
is
specific?
I don't think anything as specific as that. I think it's slightly more nebulous, like be in the good graces of the mafia at the end.
Yeah, so I was thinking
and then you can argue it with the GM and say, hey, I think that I won because of we managed
It's putting
to
a
do
lot of
this.
pressure on the GM then.
But there's
What
always
else is
pressure
new?
on the GM, though, to be fair. They're a high pressure role. But you're right in that they would have to always keep in mind they probably shouldn't know the objective either, because they can't inadvertently manipulate the story in one direction. So if you use like the fantasy setting, maybe the plot is the party is hired to go and slay a dragon and then return for the reward. someone wants to steal the dragon's gold. So maybe someone wants to slay the dragon as they're supposed to. Maybe somebody wants to, I don't know, save the dragon or something like that. Or like, maybe those objectives not specific, but you see what I mean. So
it could be that the objectives are designed that. So what you have is the team objective.
Yeah.
Is intended to be successful. Everyone is working towards that. There's no objective that says don't kill the dragon when your team objective is kill the dragon. How the dragon is killed, or rather defeated, perhaps is a better term, is a bit more nebulous. So somebody might have a goal that is make the dragon run away, and somebody else might have kill the dragon, and somebody else might have charm the dragon.
So maybe
mutually exclusive.
Here's an idea.
Still the same
maybe we
direction.
should be going stronger down the paranoia route. So in Paranoia, which is a wonderful RPG, everyone kind of works or is entangled with a particular organization and is trying to further that organization's goals, or at least the Paranoia game that we played. So what if it's not so much... What if it's something like that? Your objective is perhaps not don't kill the dragon, but further the plot in some fashion that it benefits the church.
Yeah, I think I'm getting this.
So you work for, I don't know, the church, and this person works for the Thieves Guild, and this person works for the spies, the Secret Service, and you're trying to skew the plot so that it benefits... So it's a mix of voting and arguing.
One of you works for a glazier business, and you want to break as many windows in the quest as possible.
Exactly.
So if someone tries to break into a house or a window, you want to make them succeed.
So you don't want to fight the dragon in its cave. You want to fight it in the village so that it burns the village, so that your glazier business or construction business gets work.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
we're getting somewhere there. So
Yeah,
the
I
end
think
goal
that's a good
stays
idea.
the same, but you've got
How
your
it's
mini goals
achieved.
along the end.
Yes.
And that way the game doesn't just stop as soon as someone wins. It's like a points thing at the end.
Plot. So
Like we all win, but how much did everyone else? How much did they achieve their goals?
And also, it means not only do we have the voting mechanic, we also have a discussion mechanic, because the players are always going to be trying to skew the plot, not just with votes, but with what they require to happen. So they might be like, I want to do this, and the other person's like, no, I want to do this. And
or double bluff. They can say, yes, I agree, we should do that. And then you think, no, I'm suspicious of you.
The vote is what seals the deal. And as soon as you figure that...
Yeah, the discussion's open, but then the vote's sealed. And
Yes.
Yeah.
So as soon as you think you figured out who someone else works for, you can start specifically trying to throw their specific votes, because you know that that'll further your goal better.
Yeah. Do you vote for yourself? Because that could work quite well as like a double bluff. Like you're doing something in particular, but you actually don't want it to succeed.
Yeah, I think with the original one, it would be assumed that you always use your success with boon vote for yourself. But in this case, I think it would be perfectly valid that you get a choice.
Yeah.
You can say, well, I'm not trying to kill the dragon. That's not our quest. I'm going to try and shoot an arrow, and I'm going to failure with Bane, you know?
Mm-hmm. And it's always secret, so you're always... I love that, because then you've got the added... The good part of Mafia as a game is, you know that someone's an assassin, someone's Mafia, you've no idea who, and you're now paranoid to other people, because, like, maybe your organizations are working actively against each other. Maybe the church wants to undermine the glaziers, you know? And so you might actually not just lose, but fail as a plot, as a character, fail, and that could be really bad for you as a character.
Yeah, I really like the idea of like different competing guilds as well.
Yes.
I could see like a world being built around the sort of, group of different people from different backgrounds trying to accomplish different things for their company or something like that.
And then you can still put it in different settings.
Yeah, it's still setting agnostic.
Yeah, so you've got your mafia gangs, you've got your corporations and your glazier businesses if you want to just do something real fucking wholesome. You know? You've got your corn farmers, you've got your guilds in this fantasy setting that we've talked about. You might call this game some kind of like war of guilds, some kind of guild wars.
Yeah, something like that. Some kind of guild war. Something along those
We can
lines.
maybe release a second one that's more successful.
So far we've done away with the relationships mechanic as it was, but rather we've simply got
we've sort of kept it, but it's now your relationship to the plot.
You could always have more than one goal. Like maybe you, I don't know, maybe the thief wants the church to succeed a certain amount or in some ways.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
could have more. You could have several branches of goals that you can work towards, like a plot goal of certain things you want to achieve during the plot, and one to do with other characters.
You could always fall into the mechanic of your goal is to succeed at this, but, and then there's like another thing. So you want to steal the dragon's gold, but you don't want it to be killed.
Yes. Well, then you could potentially have your organization's objective as well as your personal objective, and then it's like the organization's objective of the Glaziers is have the dragon destroy the village. Meanwhile, you also want to get rich, so you might want to steal some dragon's gold whilst you're in the cave.
You could have it very two-pronged. So the Glaziers, they want to break a lot of windows because they want to. So that's a positive for them. But a negative, they could want the church to fail really badly because they got ripped off on a bunch of stained glass windows they bought.
Yeah.
So you could have a two-pronged thing where you want to break as many windows, and I want the
Specific
church.
I
think-
think it's
I
like
think
a
it's-
bonus objective as well. Bonus if the church is crushed. You know?
Yeah.
I think it's really important to consider the fact that this isn't just necessarily successes and failures. It's successes and something good happens, and successes and bad something happens. So how you would frame that is a case of the thief's goal is to steal the dragon's gold, and they have an additional objective of they want the dragon to not be killed. So if somebody is trying to distract the dragon with arrow fire, what they might want to do is, oh yeah, you succeed with a bane.
Yeah.
And then you say that as you manage to distract the dragon, but he chases you and he's not really that badly hurt.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think it would be interesting to see how it plays out because you've still got a lot. The personal objectives mean you have to give some plot control back to the characters in terms of what actions they want to do, which might make it difficult to determine when a vote needs to happen because it could be unfair. Like if, for example, if AJ's a bigger personality at the table and you're like, I want to do this and that and this, and then you've got a quiet person in the corner who doesn't say as much, the voting is going to be unbalanced.
I think it might be a case of turn-based as a result of that.
Yeah, could be secret turns. So you write down what you want to do, give it to the GM figures out how it fits to the plot.
Yeah, I mean, that could definitely work. Unfortunately, that does rely on the players being somewhat understanding of where the line is.
Yes.
And what the plot is going to be.
Maybe it's secret. Maybe it's personal objectives per round. So you write down, this is the outcome I want. And then AJ writes, this is the outcome I want. And something like that.
I'm thinking that it's just a case of... It's the encouragement for shy players to speak up is so that they can succeed at the game. I don't think there should be penalties for people who are willing to push for their own agenda. Because that is the point of the game.
Arguably, the penalty is your increased risk of someone hitting you with a fail.
Yeah, that too.
And also, you could argue as well, it's the GM's responsibility to try and include the quieter players.
Yeah, and that's what GMs do a lot. You know, you listen to
that's
any
part of their
D&D podcast, you'll sometimes hear the GM say, "Oh, and what do you think, Genevieve Starfire?" Like,
Does it?
Yeah, I think that's definitely where you need the GM to make sure, like, there are certain challenges that... Because you need about an equal number for each player, I guess.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get a certain number of opportunities for success and failures on each character, you need to make sure it's a plot that, you know, has puzzles or solutions that can apply to everyone one by one about an equal amount.
I think the specific number of successes and failures for each particular goal is not necessarily... I thought of that as a way of applying it, but I actually much prefer the slightly more nebulous kill the dragon, but don't let it destroy the village. I much prefer that rather than you have to get 3 successes. I think that's actually a more effective means of applying it to multiple places while still keeping it interesting, because in the case of a quiet player, it might actually be a good idea for them not to be drawing much attention to themselves if they're constantly making sure that somebody else is failing.
Yeah, they just want to quietly succeed their goal by manipulating the vote with their fails and the banes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And it also probably makes it, as you said, easier to supplant that into different realms, different genres. And also, I guess, for the GM to set up the game, you don't have to think about, oh, this relationship requires this specific weight of actions. You just be like, this is what I want my plot to be. Here's if you can as a GM, as much as you can as a GM. Here's the overarching objective of the party, where the party starts, and here are the organizations and how it all fits together.
Yeah.
Might be easier to set up.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. That went in a lot of directions.
It did.
It did.
It's interesting.
I think that's what's going to happen with. I've got nothing more to add.
I think
if anyone else has got anything more to add, I think I'll
It's
just.
a good place to end.
Cool.
So I think that's a natural place for us to close on. What was it called again? Banes and Boons.
Banes and Boons.
Banes and Boons or Boons and Banes?
Banes and Boons.
Banes, boobs, bullets, and babes.
I love it. That's like the Miami version of Banes. So what's going to happen now? AJ, you've given us your game. Jack, you've given us your game. I am going to mark them both. Each category, remember, design, novelty, funness, and your use of no dice will be marked on a score from 0 to 10. Whoever has higher wins.
It's fun that we're being marked on a negative. That's tricky. How much no dice did you use?
Yes.
Did you use a negative number of dice? I've got this anti-die.
Coin flips, that's not a dice.
The opposite of dice, cards, of course.
Of course, it's the opposite of
It's
dice.
interesting that it's interesting that you both ended up using cards. And in fact,
Yeah.
when I was thinking about this myself, because of course, even though I didn't bring a game to this episode, I was still like, what would I have chosen? Cards is immediately where I ended up as well. Cards and spinners is actually what I thought, but spinners is just like dice but on a fucking flat circle.
Yeah.
So I would have lost. So shall we do the scores?
Yes.
All right, ladies, gentlemen,
Ladies
and
nuts.
the pair of you. I have thought long and hard about these two games. I have to say, this was...
I like my thoughts long and hard.
yeah, I love it when my thought is long and hard.
Thought.
Yes. I only have one at a time. I tell you what, here's what we're going to do. I'm gonna give you the score for each category one at a time, and then I'll tell you who actually won, just to try and complicate the math so you
Tension.
can't figure it out. For the use of no dice, which was our special requirement this week.
There's no H in week.
I have given you both a 10.
Hey!
The reason I've given you both a 10 is I thought you didn't just try to replace dice, you tried to rethink the entire structure of what it constitutes a game so that it didn't even require them. In your case, it was the AJ. I'm looking at AJ. In your case, it was the Cluedo-esque sort of passing of notes and thinking a lot. And of course, in yours is voting and how that fits into the wider plot. Both of those are unique mechanics, and I thought that was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yay, everyone's a winner.
Funness is the next one. So funness is how enjoyable is the game. So we've obviously played one and just discussed the other, so I've tried to imagine the playing of Jack of your one so that it is balanced. For Murder at Fieri, I've forgotten how to pronounce it.
Fieri.
Murder at Fieri.
He is a celebrity.
Yes.
He's a well-known person.
I'll take your word for it. So for Murder at Fieri Mansion, I've given you a 7 for fun.
Not bad.
At the start of the discussion, I was going to give you much less, but when we played it and I saw the mechanics slip together, I was like, actually, this is quite a lot of fun.
Yes, definitely.
With a good group of friends and a couple drinks, it
Yes.
gets
So
rolling.
I think the thing that holds it back is it needs friends, like good. Much like all things in life, it needs a certain type of friend. It needs a group of idiots, you might say, preferably 3. For Boons and Boons, I have also given you a 7 for much the same reason. I thought it is
neck and neck.
it's a unique mechanic that can fit into a lot of different settings. I love that. It means the GM is free to just do whatever the hell they like. A bit extra setup for the GM because they have to put it in a plot. But some people love that. So while we didn't play the game, I could see as soon as we added more discussion and more plot sort of skewing, it made it much more sinister and sneaky. And I love sinister, sneaky games. They're so good when you're screwing with other people and they have no idea. For Murder at Fieri Mansion, I've given you a 5 for novelty. On one hand, I think it is 50% novel in that it is different the way it plays. Not the fact that it uses cards, but the way the plot evolves is quite interesting. But I've seen that type of game before. It is very Cluedo-esque.
I did open with saying it's a Cluedo type game.
Yeah,
so
it's Cluedo meets Fiasco.
I was inviting that.
Yeah, Cluedo meets Fiasco. That's not necessarily criticism because that's great. Cluedo meets Fiasco sounds like we've played it. It was great.
But it is less novel.
It is less novel.
I have to accept that.
For Jack's game,
Baines and Boons. Thank you.
I've given you a 7.
Oh, he pulls ahead.
I've given you a 7.
God damn.
I think
I'd like to thank the Academy.
I think it's novel because it doesn't, and I think the fact that you didn't include a plot or a setting helps with the novelty of the game. It forces you to create a solid mechanic that can't be backed up by a setting or like brushed over by a setting. It had to stand on its own, and it did. Design is our final element.
Still everything to play for.
Category. So design is kind of the playability of the game, the complexity of the game, the setup, and just overall how it kind of flows together. So Murder at Fieri Mansion gets a 7.
I think
What an
that doesn't
upset.
bode well because I need to get a mark 3 higher than Jack to draw.
So
I've lost track
to
of
win.
the maths.
You
To
need
win.
3 higher to
3
win.
to win, 2 to draw.
So Jack has to get a 4
Yeah,
for me to
so
win.
for design, so if we judge design based on setup, playability, and overall flow, yours was easy to set up. Took a bit of explaining. Like my head couldn't wrap around it when it was intangible, but as soon as we started to play it, I was like, okay, yeah, actually this works.
If you just started going and you got one person who knows how the game works, rolls out pretty
and
quick.
I could see that being a good like party game, a palate cleanser before or after an RPG or between like a different board game. It kind of fits in a board game night as well as a RPG night. For
Baines and Boons.
I've given you a 6 for design.
Nads!
The reason I've given you a 6 for design is because it sounds very playable and the discussion sounds awesome, but there's quite a bit of setup to get to that point. Not just like what are your character and what are their stats, but you have to develop everything. What plot, what settings it gonna fit, all that sort of stuff. Then all the organizations.
It fits more into an established game.
An established world.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I think if you used your game as a mod, then
it's a mod.
it works a lot
Yeah.
better. As a standalone game, not so much.
Yeah, it's
More
not. It's
setup.
not complex enough for it to be really played on its own too much. You do have to have something else there.
Yeah, so that gives Murder at Fieri Mansion a 29 out of 40.
Still not got the name right.
Fieri
Such a
Mansion.
kick in the teeth. I don't even care what you call
I'm
it.
so sorry. Fieri Mansion, I don't know. And that gives I forgot what it's called.
Baines
and Boons!
A 30 out of 40. Which means Jack wins by 1 point.
Ooh, that's what
Congratulations,
Good
Jack.
game, good game.
I like. Good game.
Solid,
Good games.
You receive nothing. You
get
nothing.
nothing.
Good
Day,
day,
sir.
sir.
Ah,
And we're turning that into a
lots of fun.
catchphrase.
Lots of fun.
I hope you guys enjoyed yourself. Thank you so much for joining us. Next week, I will be the judge of the game, and we have a couple of special requirements, one of which will be the game must be a survival game, and the game must be customizable. I'm going to do that again because I forgot what my fucking thing was.
This is all staying in.
Yeah.
All your ineptitude for the world to see.
My ineptitude is irreconcilable. Right, let's start again.
Exactly.
I'm cutting it right there.
And that's it.
it.
End
You're
credits.
done.